Our first reader is Donn Critchell.
I'm not going to climb. I got to know Ann LaMott because I take the Washington Post online, and they sent me an email, oddly enough, saying maybe you'd be interested in 10 articles written by Ann LaMott, and they gave a brief description. And I thought, well, yeah, I'll try that. Well, they turned out to be pretty good, and I shared an article with our minister, and so that's why we're here today. So what goes around came back. So here I am, and Ann LaMott is just over 60 years old. She is a Pulitzer Prize winner. You can find her on YouTube. She has several YouTube readings and things. She's written a bunch of books. I have yet to read the ones about birds, which I hope to get to fairly soon. And today we're talking about truth being a paradox. Everything true in the world has innate contradictions. Quote, Socrates said, I know one thing, that I know nothing, end quote. This is distressing to those of us who prefer a more orderly and predictable system, where you could say and prove that certain things are true and that their opposites are false. And Ann LaMott said, quote, life is taxing enough at its most predictable, but you can't bank on anything. For example, we learned as children that light is particles in a predictable world. We would all still agree that since light obviously is particles, like grains of sand, we could get on with our lives. But you have other people who say they can prove that light is waves, like undulations in the water. The paradox, both of these are true. And both are true at the same time. But if both are true, then why have they never been observed together in the same room at the same time? Maybe life's like that. She continues. Youth starts with beauty, a strong young body mixed with uncertainty, self-doubt, folly, pride, mistakes. At last, the paper's thin skin over weary bones, and a body combined with reflection, gratitude, and forgiveness. End quote. Older people remember things in the far past, but not what happened recently. The paradox is that their mind may view themselves as much younger until a person steps in with reality. For me, it's getting up off the floor from the ground. Done the wrong way, I don't get up all the way, as Mark can attest, and I need help. And I end up on crutches. But my mind says, before I tried to get up, oh, you can just jump right up. Well, I can't do that anymore. So I've learned how to get up without messing up my knees. So paradox means that you must be able to keep two wildly different ideas in your head at the same time. But all truth is really a paradox, and this turns out to be a reason for hope. If you arrive at a place in life that's miserable, it or you will change, and something else about it will also be true. So paradox is an invitation to go deeper into life. For example, Annie went through very difficult times when she was younger. She was a drug addict. And she went to AA and failed, and then she went back to AA and she failed again, and eventually her life got so bad that she thought she was going to die. And that was finally the point where she turned her life around and went back to AA and straightened herself out. Well, unfortunately, her son also went through the descent into drugs, and he left home, and every now and then he would ask for money, and she would send it to him, and he would work occasionally, and then get some more drugs and have more problems. And finally, she got a call one day, and he said, "I need bail money." And she said, "No, you're not getting bail money." And so, because of her refusal, he ended up in prison. Well, Annie's friends at that time couldn't understand how she could give up on her son. I mean, what a strange thing. But they hadn't been through her type of life where she understood what had happened. So he's in prison. Well, now he's locked up, and he says, I got to get out of the cell every once in a while. Well, there was an AA group in prison. Hot dog, I can get out for an hour. So I'll join the AA group, which he did. And after a while, he finally had heard the other people in the prison talking about their lives, and he decided to share his life, and he turned himself around. So his success was a paradox where he had to do something better. And this is what LaMott learned about drug users. You can't rescue them with good ideas or a checkbook. Help is the sunny side of control. So stop helping so much. And number 3, harm is unwanted help when they need to figure out things for themselves. And sometimes that applies to us, and we don't have to be druggies or people that have gone through that process. To see the bigger screen, instead of a nice, safe belief where you see work or home or a president as always positive or negative, try the wider reality. Look at the other side. For instance, I was at a conference with another teacher, and they said, well, pick a subject. So we picked air pollution. Thought, that's a great subject. I'm a science teacher, we can do all sorts of things with it. So the other person was an elementary school teacher, and she was a pretty sharp woman. And so she said, okay, well, let's get started on this. I said, good, let's talk about the good qualities of air pollution. And she said, what? And I said, yeah, there's got to be, a positive side to this. So what can we come up with? Well, it turned out we came up with about 7 different things. The first being beautiful sunsets. We've had smoke this year and from Canada, and we've had some really great sunsets. There were some other things too, jobs, new inventions, plants, being able to move north now, so we get to see different types of plants. So there's lots of things. So paradox is an invitation to know yourself and be open to new ideas. When we're stuck in our convictions, we enter into a disease of having good ideas and being right. We think we have a lock on truth, and occasionally we find out we're wrong. So I had a friend that lives near me, and we talked about driving down to Kingston, and he said, well, you go past Gregg Farms, and that's the quickest way through. And I said, no, there's a better way. You go a little bit further south on 9, and you can cut straight across. And he says, I think you're wrong. And I said, well, I think I'm right. So I said, I'm going to prove it. I'm going to measure it. Guess what? He was right. I was wrong. So, being a science teacher, I always started my first class saying, this is what science says right now. But it can change in the future. So we have to be able to adjust to changes in what we think is the truth. Finally, I was on the board, trustees in this congregation, with another member who was the devil's advocate. And he was really good. And this was back in the time with Reverend Linda. And he drove her crazy. Because she wanted these things to just sort of flow nicely along. And he would say, but how about this? Da, 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 da. And we'd sit there and listen as a board and say, I don't know. And he'd explain why he said it. And every now and then, we changed our decision because he was right. And he made us see a different viewpoint that was important. Other times, we didn't agree with him, and he knew when to sort of back off and say, okay, that's fine. So I enjoyed those conversations because they opened up new approaches. Thank you.
And now Annie LaBarge. Annie, do you want the soapbox or no? Do you want the soapbox for height, or are you all set?
I don't know. I'm 5'4".
Okay, go.
Sort of in between. Yeah. Okay. This is pretty much Anne Lamott's words, because. Okay, yeah. Here we go. Can you hear me now? Okay, so these are pretty much Anne Lamott's words. Hello. Going back and forth. By the way, she likes some of my poems, so I'm very. Yeah. I love her. This is from Somehow, which was her 20th book, which came out this past year. Okay. And I left most of my notes home. It's Palm Sunday. It's Palm Sunday. Okay. Don't let me slide forward. It's Palm Sunday. After 2 solid weeks of torrential rain and 6 days after the latest school shooting. Some friends are moving to Canada because they can't bear what this nation has become with MAGA and school shootings. 3 little kids and 3 aides were killed in Nashville. They are moving to seek freedom from their kids being shot at school. Today's Sunday school group, a large group of all brown kids, come in, and one of the families is going through a catastrophic divorce. So the youngest, who's 9 and very small, often comes to church crying. Another girl who's 9 years old is my size, which must be hard. Well, I asked I do ask the kids what they think of God, because here is God 101. You're perfect and adored as is. God is your friend and a healer. And one of the boys says, God is basically a big vet. So I asked the kids if they had heard about the school shooting. They heard a lot about it. The two little girls, two 9-year-old girls, know that all of the other kids who were shot, or the 3 who were shot, were also 9 years old. I asked all of the kids, well, has your teachers, your parents talked to you about this? Not really, said a 14-year-old boy. They told us about it. We saw it on the news. My mother cried a lot, and we had an active shooter drill at school. My heart sank. So then I thought, I'm going to tell them a lot of what I know about life. I told them that life is a precious gift. It's full of pleasures and messes, delights and loss, suffering and love. And I shoehorned in a suggestion that they try to read as many books as they could, because books will give them a better life. Promise me you'll all do this a lot. 2 kids at the same time say, I already do. I also told them something I wish that somebody had told me. There's an answer for when bad things happen to people, or you're scared. Do any of you know what that might be? They all look at each other like they're on a panel. Run, hide, fight, says a teenage boy. I agree. I totally agree. He's right, and I can't stand it. Call your mother, said a little girl, a very tiny, wavering voice. Yes, or you tell a teacher or an auntie, someone you trust, an adult. You tell, okay? We decided to make some cards for the kids in Nashville who are alive, because that's a generous, loving thing to do, might recognize as God. We got all art supplies to make cards. And while they worked, I told the kids the story of the horse and the sparrow. The horse comes along, a war horse, comes along the street, and there's a little sparrow on its back with its feet in the air. What on earth are you doing? The horse sneers. I'm trying to hold back the darkness, the sparrow said. That's ridiculous. You'll barely weigh an ounce. We do what we can. Is that a true story? One kid asked. I watched them draw trees and hearts and dogs, their faces inward and dreamy, their mouths on the edges of smiles. I told them about Jesus and what he wanted his disciples to know, that serving others was their calling, not gaining power and prestige, but serving. So at the Last Supper, he showed them how to be humble and share by washing everyone's feet. And here's the craziest thing in the Bible. Jesus even washed Judas's feet. He knows Judas is about to betray him to the Roman authorities, which will lead to the crucifixion on Good Friday. And he washes his feet anyway. This is the Easter message, that you are loved no matter who you are, because God can only love. Why is it called Good Friday if Jesus dies? We call it good because the world is sometimes so dark and so cruel it will take your breath away. So Jesus dies to change that suffering into renewal. After he dies on Good Friday, women wait at the cross, and on Saturday, they wait for a while in an empty tomb. It's very dark. And Sunday morning comes and it's Easter. This is new life. The bulbs bloom. The kids look at me like, the bulbs bloom? That's it? You know, I said a while ago that sad things often come alongside of a world full of delights. Let's go find some delights. Let's take a walk. They go outside under these fragrant, blossoming trees. Morning doves are cooing. I say, listen, she's going to say, chick-dee-dee-dee. And we all wait until she comes through. And then we keep walking, and there's poppies and wildflowers sticking up through the grass. And I point over there, and I say, see that gold patch and that deep green? On that hill over there? I want to lie down in that golden blanket. And the kids all look at each other. Like, okay, crazy lady. We keep walking. The two little girls, the two little 9-year-olds are holding hands. We're scuffling along. And we say, do you think we'd have like another warm, sunny day again? And they look up and squint and see the sun. And you can even see the moon still. And we just walk along, loving the celestial wonders together under a perfectly ordinary sky. That's right.
Yeah, now I have a soapbox over here, so I can really talk to you. Recently, I heard a story of a rabbi who was asked by his congregation how to pray. The rabbi replied, help, thanks, wow. It seemed to me to be a universal prayer. Here is some of what LaMott has to say in her book, Help, Thanks, Wow, the 3 Essential Prayers. Can you imagine that you have a true self way down deep inside, a self that will still be there even if your mind goes? If you can imagine that, it's not such a huge step to imagining yourself believing in any sort of higher power to whom you could say, hey, I could always imagine God was near, or at least true. And imagination is from God. It is part of the way we understand the world. I think it's okay to imagine God and grace the best you can. Some of the stuff we imagine engages and connects and calls for the best in us to come out. Other imaginings disengage us and shut us down. My understanding is that you get to choose which of your thoughts to go with. I have a brilliant friend with a master's degree who experiences God as a low-seated easy chair, whose arms are very long and upholstered and actually hold her. I know a person with a PhD who goes to a church based on Star Wars. May the Force be with you. But you know what? When he and my other friends and I have run out of good ideas on how to fix the unfixable, when we finally stop trying to heal our own sick, stressed minds with our sick, stressed minds, when we are truly at the end of our rope and just done, we say the same prayer. We say, help. LaMott goes on to say, thanks is the short form of the original prayer I used to say in gratitude for any unexpected grace in my life. Thank you, thank you, thank you. As I grew spiritually, the prayer became the more formal, thank you. And now into the wrinkly peaks of maturity, it is simply thanks. Gratitude begins in our hearts and then dovetails into behavior. It almost always makes you willing to be of service, which is where the joy resides. It means you are willing to stop being such a jerk. When you are aware of all that has been given to you in your lifetime and in the past few days, it is hard not to be humbled and pleased to give back. Most humbling of all is to comprehend the life-saving gift that our pit crew of people has been for you, and all the experiences you have shared, the journeys together, the collaborations, births and deaths, divorces, rehab and vacations, the solidarity you have shown one another. Every so often you realize that without all of them, your life would be barren and pathetic. It would be death of a salesman, though, with email and texting. Further, she says, the third great prayer, wow, is often offered with a gasp, a sharp intake of breath, when we can't think of another way to capture the sight of shocking beauty or destruction, or of a sudden unbidden insight or an unexpected flash of grace. Wow means we are not dulled to wonder. We click into being fully present when we're stunned into that gasp by the sight of a birth or images of the World Trade Center falling down, or the experience of being in a fjord at dawn for the first time. Wow is about having one's mind blown by the mesmerizing or the miraculous, the veins in a leaf, birdsong, volcanoes. When we are stunned to the place beyond words, we're finally starting to get somewhere. It is so much more comfortable to think that we know what it all means, what to expect, and how it all hangs together. When we are stunned to the place beyond words, when an aspect of life takes us away from being able to chip away something until it's down to a manageable size, and then to file it away nicely, when all we can say in response is, wow, that's a prayer. Finally, LaMott says, so I pray constantly between bouts of trying to live life on life's terms. Help, thanks, wow. I end most prayers with amen before my inevitable re-entry into regular old so-called real life, because for thousands of years, believers and prophets have said to. So I do. It's that simple.